Dad, my computer was stolen.
No, it wasn't. We just gave it to Amanda's daughters. They need it for school.
What? That's a top-of-the-line gaming computer. They don't need something with that much power just to do math problems.
Well, I paid for it, so I get to say who gets to use it. And we gave it to Amanda's daughters. Besides, those video games are a complete waste of time.
Hi there, my name is Beth, and I really lived a life very similar to something out of a twisted fairy tale. It's complete with a wicked stepmother and not one, but two evil stepsisters as well. However, the real villain of this story is actually my father, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let me rewind things a bit to back when I was 14. My mother and father would argue constantly, and more than once. The police would need to be called and break up their fighting. On a few occasions, they would even throw things at each other. Suffice to say that they ended up getting divorced, but thankfully, rather than have a long and heated legal battle over who got custody of me. For the first time in quite a long time, they were able to come to an agreement and chose to have equal custody of me. It was a bit hectic spending 1 week with one parent and then the next week with the other. But even though they hated each other, they both adored me and I loved them both just as much. And to be honest, they were much better parents once they weren't together anymore. They were also much happier people as well, but all that changed when my dad met Amanda. Anyone with half a brain in their head could see that she was a complete gold digger. But my dad couldn't get past just seeing a very attractive and hot woman. My mother was a bit on the heavier side, and Amanda looked like she could get a job posing for a swimsuit magazine. Honestly, I really didn't care who my dad dated so long as he was happy and they treated him well. But Amanda was obsessed with keeping up appearances. To make matters worse, her 2 daughters were exactly the same, and all 3 of them were obsessed with the latest fashion trends and designer clothes. For me, all I cared about was my video games, reading comic books, and going to every movie that ever came out. When they first started to date, I tried to keep my distance, but my dad insisted that I get to know Amanda and her daughters. They did try to include me in their favorite things, but it was a terrible idea.
Hey, Beth, are you interested in going shopping with me and my daughters?
Maybe. What are you going shopping for?
We don't really have a purpose in mind. We'll just go and try on clothes and see if we can find any good deals.
Oh, yeah, thanks, but I'll pass. I only really go shopping when I need something.
Well, we need to go and try on the latest designer dresses. Don't you want to try one on? They'll look so much better than that hideous sweatshirt and jeans that you always wear.
It was plainly obvious that Amanda and her daughters were girly girls, and I was a bit more of a tomboy. We just didn't have any overlapping interest, and that was entirely fine by me. But my dad really wanted us to bond and was constantly trying to force me to spend time with them. Eventually, he did give up, though, but only after he and Amanda got married. The wedding was a nightmare, as Amanda and her daughters forced me to wear a massive poofy pink dress. I felt like such a fool wearing that hideous thing, but they insisted that it was the latest fashion trend, and that it was important for us to wear them. It was amazing that I didn't throw up the second the dress was put on my body, to be honest. At any rate, after they were married, things began to be a bit weird. I still continued to go back and forth between my parents, and the first time that something felt off was this one time that I came back from being at my mom's for a week. As I was walking towards my room, Amanda stopped me.
Oh, you're back? Well, listen, since you don't live here full-time like we do, we felt that it was only fair that my eldest daughter get your room since it's the biggest room in the house.
You did what? Dad, did you know about this?
Yeah, sorry, kiddo. It's only fair, though.
I was so furious. It didn't really matter that my new room was slightly smaller, but the fact that they hadn't even asked and just chose to move my things without my knowledge. Plus, they didn't exactly treat my belongings with any kind of respect. They had essentially put all my books, comic books, and video games in one huge pile in the closet. It took me days to sort through them all and put them back the way I had them. That, however, was only the first incident. A couple months went by, and one day I went out to hang out with my friends, and when I came back, I discovered that my computer was missing. I thought we had been robbed, but then, when I went to my father, my fear turned to anger as my dad told me what happened. Dad, my computer was stolen.
No, it wasn't. We just gave it to Amanda's daughters. They need it for school.
What? That's a top-of-the-line gaming computer. They don't need something with that much power just to do math problems.
Well, I paid for it, so I get to say who gets to use it. And we gave it to Amanda's daughters. Besides, those video games are a complete waste of time.
After that, I stopped keeping anything of value at my dad's house, and for the next few years, it was one thing after another. When I finally turned 18 and could choose where I wanted to live, I made the choice to move everything to my mom's. It was just the right decision, really, since my mom lived close to the college that I wanted to attend, and by living there, I could save myself some travel time and money. At least that was what I told my father, and it was true. But the bigger and more important reason was because I had had enough of Amanda and her hellspawn, and I wanted to finally move away from them and their greedy paws. Even after I graduated from college, I still lived at my mom's, at least until I found my first job as game designer for a major video game company. I had taken programming in college, and I was pretty good at it. So much so that they offered me a fairly well-paying position. And so for a few years, things were going well for me. I loved my job, and I still kept in touch with my dad, but I only really visited occasionally, and only really when my stepsisters and stepmother weren't around. However, my father gave me a call out of the blue one day.
Hey Beth, listen, can you come over for dinner this weekend? We're hosting a special dinner for your stepsister, and we really want you to be there.
Do I really have to go, Dad? They don't care about me at all.
Yes, it's very important that you come. It's mandatory.
Part of me wanted to fight back against the fact that he didn't even want to give me a choice in the matter, but I wasn't interested in fighting him at the moment. And so I went over when he asked and found out that it was all a part of some scheme that he and Amanda had cooked up. They had apparently invited over a friend of theirs that had a rather wealthy son that they were trying to set up with Amanda's eldest daughter. Unlike me, both of her daughters hadn't done much with their lives. Neither had taken any schooling after high school, and they didn't even have part-time jobs. My father even still gave them an allowance which only partially fed their shopping addictions. I could tell that my father was eager to marry off one of them so that he wouldn't have such a strain on his own bank account. The only snag was that their friend and his son wanted to meet the entire family, and that included me. The idea was that he wanted to ensure that we were a healthy and well-rounded family, and that we would be a good influence on his son. Personally, I couldn't care less, but since my dad wanted me there, I had no choice. Just before dinner, my father's friend showed up along with his son. Until that moment, I had never felt butterflies in my stomach when seeing someone. But once Ryan came into the room, I felt an instant attraction to him. However, I knew that I needed to ignore him since he wasn't there to meet me but my stepsister. The funny thing, though, was that while she introduced herself to him, he kept glancing over at me. If didn't know better, I could have sworn that he felt the same way I did. As dinner went on, we kept catching each other staring at the other, and I discovered that he had a lot in common with me. He worked in finance, but his passion was playing video games, and he had a home theater system installed in his home because he loved movies so much. I had to bite my tongue more than once to resist hitting on him. Meanwhile, my stepsister was completely failing to impress him. Every time he asked her a question, she would make rude remarks.
So what kinds of things do you do for fun?
Oh, I love shopping and reading fashion magazines. What about you?
Oh, I love movies and games. I think I've seen every film ever made at least once.
Why, that sounds like such a waste of time, especially since most movies are so boring. You sound just like Beth.
I'm not surprised by that.
As soon as he said it, I began to blush. I knew that he wasn't there for me, but it just felt like he was the perfect guy for me. As the night came to a close, he secretly passed me a slip of paper when no one was looking. On it was his phone number. After that day, we began talking and began dating. I knew that once my father found out that he would be angry, but I didn't care. Although my reasons for pursuing a relationship with him weren't motivated by revenge, I would be lying if I said that stealing him away from my stepsister didn't feel good to me. As the weeks went on, I knew that I needed to tell my father about him, and that I was dating him. I had to come clean since it was only a matter of time before they found out. Hey, Dad. So I wanted to talk to you about Ryan.
Ryan? Oh, you mean my friend's kid. Yeah, that guy is an idiot. I asked my friend about him and he said that he is dating some ugly, nerdy girl. Ah, well, I was so close to finally marrying off one of Amanda's kids. You can't believe how much of a burden they are on me. It's a shame, but he's a loser.
No, he really isn't. And just for your information, I'm the nerdy girl that he is dating. But good to know that you weren't all that emotionally invested in him dating your stepdaughter. With that, I hung up on him. It was bad enough that he badmouthed the man that I was growing to love, but for him to badmouth me, even though he didn't realize that he was doing so, was unforgivable. It took me months before I finally spoke with him again, and it was only to rub his nose in the fact that I was engaged to Ryan. Years passed, and Ryan and I got married, and we now have 2 lovely children. Meanwhile, my 2 stepsisters are still single, miserable, and living off of my father's money. They've grown quite fat over the years, since they essentially do nothing other than shop and watch TV all day long as well. In fact, things got so bad that my father was finally forced to kick Amanda and her daughters out of his house and divorce her. They were driving him in financial ruin, and he finally got a backbone and realized that he had made a terrible mistake. Shortly after that, he called me up and was crying on the phone, begging me to forgive him for all of the times that he had sided with them over me and for ruining our relationship. I didn't want to forgive him, but Ryan encouraged me to at least give him a second chance. Since then, my father has actually made an attempt to better himself, and he has been a very good grandfather as well. To be honest, I'm very grateful that I attended that dinner all those years ago. The thought of Ryan ending up with one of my stepsisters is a terrifying one. He truly would not have been happy with her, and she would have bled him dry of all his wealth. My father to this day says that he is happy that I ended up with such a wonderful husband, but I know that he is secretly salty that I stole him away from my stepsisters. But hey, he chose me. I can't help it. I'm his princess, and he is my Prince Charming. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. Nancy, I've had enough. What did I ever do to you that has made you hate me so much?
Do you really want to know?
Yes. Tell me now.
It's because you aren't good enough for my son. He's a special boy and deserves someone far prettier and more pleasant to be around than you. He should be engaged to someone born from a wealthy family instead of a deadbeat like you.
Hey, I'm Paula, and I'll be sharing the story on how my own mother-in-law beat me, resulting in the devastating loss of my unborn baby. Unfortunately, my husband wasn't of good help while I was dealing with all of this, and he showed his true colors eventually. So, I married Joshua when I was about 25. We met at the same workplace. Our relationship was very focused on intimacy. I think there wasn't a single week in the time we were together where Josh hasn't done the deed with me. But although Josh was kind of weird in the sense that he always wanted to get intimate, I did love him, so it was a huge joy when he proposed to me a few years ago. Of course, his mother disapproved, going out of her way to let me know that she really did not like me. Whenever we went out at a restaurant or to a park, his mom, Nancy, would always purposefully forget about me or do something that downright humiliates me in front of a public audience.
I got everybody drinks.
Thanks, Mom.
Of course, honey.
Oh, that's...
Oop! Sorry, Paula, it looks like I forgot to order for you. Oof! You'll have to share with your fiancé or go grab one yourself. It was pretty far.
The store is across the street.
And I have a bad back. Joshua, do you see how your future wife is treating me?
Paula, I'm sure my mom didn't mean it. We can just get drinks later.
Okay, maybe Josh was right. Maybe his mom forgot that I was with them and got drinks for everybody but me. This was completely believable, if only it wasn't the 40th time she was doing this. Nancy would insult me behind Josh's back too, and she even blamed me for every little incident that happened in her life.
Paula, you need to cut back on the showering.
Excuse me, what?
Do you see these utility bills? Our utility bills have gone up $200 ever since you've moved in, so you really have to slow it down there. I'm generous enough to even let you live here, so don't make me charge you money for being here.
I think the funniest part about all of this was the fact that I barely even showered at Josh's house. I showered at the gym most of the time right after my workouts, so even with the 5 times I showered at home, there was no way it would add $200 to Josh's family's bills. I think it's already very clear that Nancy hated my guts, and I needed to know why, so I confronted her. Nancy, I've had enough. What did I ever do to you that has made you hate me so much?
Do you really want to know?
Yes. Tell me now.
It's because you aren't good enough for my son. He's a special boy and deserves someone far prettier and more pleasant to be around than you. He should be engaged to someone born from a wealthy family instead of a deadbeat like you.
I couldn't believe what she was saying, although I had always suspected that what she was saying could be the case. Despite her objections about me, I figured that I should still go through with the wedding. After all, I was marrying Josh, not her. And Josh and I were very happy. Cess. Fortunately, she didn't ruin my wedding, which was great. Shortly after I got married to Joshua, I became pregnant with his child. I was pretty ecstatic. I was finally going to start a family with someone that I truly loved. And also, this might help Nancy realize that I wasn't a bad person. She'll see her new grandbaby and be really happy about it. So, I have some really good news. I'm pregnant.
Oh, I see.
Wow, honey. That's awesome.
I know. I can't wait to see if it'll be a boy or a girl.
I didn't know you two had done the deed already.
Oh, you didn't know?
I bet you corrupted my poor baby.
I see how this was. I just didn't push her from there and ate my dinner silently for the rest of the night. In bed, Josh began to scold me.
Why would you get pregnant? Now who am I going to have sex with?
I'm sorry, Josh. I didn't know how it happened. We can still do it while I'm pregnant.
You suck. That's nasty. I don't want to get it on with a pregnant lady.
Did he just call me a pregnant lady? I was still his wife, so it was completely crazy to hear him call me a pregnant lady as if he didn't know me. Anyway, as time went on, I felt like the tensions in the family were growing by the week, as my baby bump was growing. I think there was one particular moment when I began experiencing morning sickness, and this apparently really ticked off my mother-in-law.
Can you stop puking? It's so nasty and annoying.
I'm sorry, I really can't help it.
Ugh, what a filthy pig.
She was really irritating me. Didn't she have the same symptoms when she was pregnant with Josh? I can't believe another mother would have this type of mentality, and I knew that she really wasn't going to change now that I was going to have a baby. Well, that was that then. But I think there was one day when Nancy really went crazy. I had accidentally fallen on my stomach. But before you panic, I luckily caught myself with my palms, though my wrists hurt a lot from the quick impact. Nancy ran into the room, a panicked look on her face, but quickly her face turned from worried to annoyed when she saw that it was only me laying on the ground. She rolled her eyes as I whined, calling to her for help. However, do you know the craziest thing that happened next? Nancy pushed me to the ground with her foot. I yelled out in pain as she stomped on my back.
You're so annoying and overdramatic. Get up, girl. Hurry and get up.
I quickly scrambled to my feet with a lot of difficulty. I was crying in pain now. I couldn't believe that even my mother-in-law would stoop to this kind of level. I just wished that nothing had happened, since Nancy did kick me kind of hard. The next week, I went to the hospital to do another checkup on my pregnancy. The doctor was shocked when she did her checks. She told me that it seemed that the baby had passed away. I was devastated. It couldn't be true. But it was. I got so incredibly depressed from this happening. I couldn't tell my family what had happened. The news hit me too hard. But I eventually told them.
Oh, thank goodness. I never wanted a grandchild from your filthy body anyway.
Sorry, hun. Does this mean I can go back to doing it with you now?
Are you serious right now? Was this really my husband saying all of these nasty things now? He was never like this. Okay, maybe he was a little obsessed with my body for the entirety of our relationship, but that doesn't really mean anything. He treated me very well, so this made me feel really horrible. You didn't even help me when I fell. I can't believe you'd be that type of person.
Well, what could I do? It was like this moment just waiting to happen.
Wait, so you're admitting to killing my baby?
It's not like that. Paula, what I meant was that...
No, I think I know exactly what you mean by this.
Listen, I could not let you give birth to a child that had turned out to be ugly, all because of you. And I could not die knowing that you are the mother of my own grandson. I had to do it.
Josh, aren't you going to do anything about this?
Not sure. I don't think I wanted a child in the first place anyway. So, I'm with my mother. Sorry, babe. But thank God, I'd been touching girls at the club since you weren't available. I can finally be with you again.
There weren't enough words to express how heartbroken and betrayed I felt by this. Without even thinking about what I was doing, I ran towards Josh and kicked him as hard as I possibly could between the legs. I could tell that both he and Nancy were shocked by this. Nancy just stared at me, scared that I would attack her next, but I just stared daggers at her, until Josh slowly started to stand back up when I kicked him again. He fell over, writhing in pain. I quickly called one of my friends that night and explained my entire situation. I finally realized how horrible people Josh and Nancy were, and that I had to leave them, especially after Josh admitted to being with other women at clubs. The divorce actually went by pretty smoothly, though my now ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law kept telling me that this was going to end with me being homeless. We'll see about that. After I moved out of Josh's place, I knew I had to find a job somewhere else. I did quite quickly, since the boss of my old work luckily liked me a lot and recommended me for another position. I started with renting rooms before I finally settled into a place of my own. Looking for sympathy, I posted the story about what happened to me on social media, and the story went viral, and Josh and his mother were tormented as a result. It wasn't my intention to cause them problems, but I was quite happy to hear that people would stop them on the street and give them crap for how they treated me. So, honestly, I was quite traumatized from relationships because of Josh. I didn't try to get into any relationships, but soon I met the CEO of a big company. He was very respectful towards me, and we did start dating. One day, I was at the supermarket when I recognized Nancy working one of the registers. Hey, Nancy.
Oh, come on, not you again. How's your life? Is it going miserably like I told you?
Actually, it's going great. I'm engaged to Lance Owens now.
As in the CEO of that big company? You're kidding.
Nope, I'm not.
Well, if you're so wealthy, you wouldn't mind lending us a few $1,000s to just pay off the bills we need. We'd appreciate it. It would be the least you could do after spreading that nasty story about us online.
What? I'm not married to Josh anymore. I don't have to give anything to you guys.
Come on, don't be greedy now. After all, after you kicked Josh like you did, he is no longer able to get an erection. You broke him and stole from me the ability to ever have a grandchild.
Nancy, please. It was only fair. After all, you killed my child, so I took from you the ability to ever have a grandchild. Good riddance. Your son is deviant monster, and the world is better off without him making a child. You're just lucky that I didn't also kick you. Angrily, I opened a carton of milk that I had been intending to buy and dumped it on the counter in front of me, making a massive mess for Nancy to have to clean up. It honestly felt good hearing Nancy sputtering behind me as I walked out of the door. If they really thought they could just use me for money like that, then they were completely wrong. A week later, I got calls from Nancy and Josh asking for financial help. I told my fiancé, and he ended up taking care of it by filing a lawsuit against two of them. It was easy winning since he was rich and afforded a very good lawyer. They had to move out and move into a very cheap area of the city, living miserably now. I don't really feel bad, since Josh was a cheater and weirdo. Also, Nancy hated me, even if she pretended she was different now. But what do you think?
So I'm going to start by saying that you should be careful what you say, as you never know how life might turn out. Things rarely ever turn out the way that you expect them to, and it never hurts to be kind. My name is Mo, and this is a story of someone that I knew that wishes that they had been told this years ago. I don't think that they would have listened to the good advice, but stranger things have happened. It all started when I graduated from university, and I was just getting started in the world of business. I wasn't sure who would hire me, so I just applied to every place that I could, and I did manage to get an interview with Jumpstart Incorporated. They were a large company that made batteries. It honestly didn't sound like that fascinating of a company, but I needed the experience, and so I went to the interview dressed in my best suit and tried as hard as I could to make a good impression. The ad online had said that they were hiring 10 entry-level positions, and as I looked around the waiting room, where they had gathered all the hopeful candidates together, I saw that the people around me were all around my age. There were some men and women, as well as all ethnicities. As they began to call people in, though, I started to recognize a pattern, and it didn't bode well for me. I noticed that the people that were white were leaving their interviews smiling and energetic, and everyone else that was black like me left either angry or nearly in tears. And then it was my turn, and I went into the office and was determined to do my best. It was a small office, and sitting behind the table was a man who was only about 10 years older than myself, but he was clearly some kind of manager. "Hi there, my name is Mo, and I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to interview for your company." "Oh, hi Mo. Well, I need to let you know that we'll be doing a police clearance, and that you will need to have a valid driver's license. Is that so?" "That won't be a problem. I have a perfect record, and I do have a license." "Well, I doubt that, but hey, there's always a first for everything. Also, we don't tolerate being late. Is that something that you struggle with as well?" I could tell that he was implying that I fit the stereotypes of most black men that he had invented in his brain, and that there was no way that he was going to hire me. The reactions from the previous applicants were beginning to make a lot more sense now. I am a very early riser, and I am also very punctual too. "Okay, well, I don't think that you'll like our cafeteria too much though. They don't serve fried chicken and watermelon, nor do our vending machines have grape soda or bananas." I could tell by the smug look on his face that he was enjoying what he was saying, and that he knew full well that everything he was saying was incredibly racist. He just didn't care. "Are you serious? How dare you say such horrible things? You know, one day you'll live to regret saying stuff like that." "Ha! I don't think that I will. Listen, bud, the fact of the matter is that if you want to work at this company, then you must go through me, and I have never hired anyone that wasn't white. We just make better employees after all." I had had enough, and so I just stood up and left without saying another word, although I could hear him laughing in the background as I left. I was so angry that I could barely see straight, but then the next day, an ad was posted by Lightspeed Limited. They were a rival company to Jumpstart Incorporated, and there was a lot of buzz about how they were a much better company to work for. I was hesitant to apply, as I had a sour taste in my mouth from my interview with Jumpstart. It had been such a terrible situation, but in the end I applied, and I was called in for an interview. I waited no more than 1 minute when a Japanese woman came out and then escorted me to her office to begin the interview. It was so incredibly different than my last one. She actually asked me questions and gave constructive feedback on my responses. In the end, she offered me a job working in research and development, which I jumped at. I didn't really know much about the position, but she was convinced that I would be a perfect fit. The first day that I showed up, I met Singh, and we hit it off right away. My job was to keep him motivated and on task, while monitoring the things that he was developing, and report to our superiors on what he had created. It was my job to sell the ideas that he came up with, and Singh always had something new that he promised would revolutionize everything. He was constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. Years passed, and our team did extremely well. Until one day, Singh did it. He designed a battery that tripled the power of any battery on the market, and was cheaper to produce as well. Our company invested a lot of money in his ideas, and it paid off. Everyone was buying our brand of batteries only, and our competitors were hurting as a result. The owners of our company took this as an opportunity to remove their rivals by buying them out. It was a good time for Singh and I as we were given the positions as senior managers of our department. Part of that meant hiring a lot of people to fill new roles in the company, as it was expanding quite a bit. Sadly, most of the people that were applying were from our rival companies. Our technology worked so well that many of them were either going out of business or were making massive cutbacks. I felt a bit guilty about this. That is, until I saw one of the names on the interview list. There was a Jason from Jumpstart Incorporated. When I saw that, I knew that I had to personally interview him, and so I set it up. The look on his face when he saw me on the other side of the desk was priceless. I honestly thought that he was going to just turn around and leave without saying a word, but he sat down instead and put the fakest smile he could on his face. To me, that showed that he was desperate and that he really needed this job. "So Jason, can you tell me about yourself?" I was determined to mess with him as much as possible before I told him that there was no way we would ever hire someone as racist and cruel as him. "Well, I'm a good leader, and I am good at keeping my team within budget, and have successfully done so for the last 10 years at my former job." "Is that so?" "Well, I doubt that. Something tells me that you tend to overspend, actually. It's probably why your company went under." "Well, no, that wasn't remotely my fault. Your company just made a better product, and so mine let quite a few of us go." "So you were fired then?" "Well, Yeah, but only because your company stole so much of our business. Oh, it was quite fun to see him squirming. So Jason, how much do you need this job really? Well, you see, I really need this job. After working with Jumpstart, I've had a hard time finding a job anywhere else. I've eaten through most of my savings, and my landlord has been hounding me my rent money. That sounds really hard. I wonder how many black men were living in a similar situation, and you didn't show them mercy or give them a chance. Now, why is that? Well, you see, it's just that, well, I wanted to create a healthy work environment that would motivate people. Is that so? Well, sadly, you won't be doing that here. Oh, don't tell me that you're still holding a grudge after all these years. When will you people ever grow up? If you honestly expect me to hire you on, after all the nonsense you rattled off the first time we met, then you are delusional. But don't worry, I won't be sending you home empty-handed. I slid a banana and a can of grape soda across the table to him. Here you are. It's not much, but at least when you're waiting in the unemployment line, you'll have something to snack on. Oh, and you should know that I blacklisted your name as well. There isn't a company in this city that will hire you now. And with that, he jumped up from his chair and stormed out of the office. I had clearly struck a nerve, and rather than get confrontational, he had decided to just leave. Which was for the best, really. After all, I had security guards on standby, just in case he had chosen to do something stupid. I had heard through the grapevine that he couldn't find a job in our industry due to my blacklisting him, and was forced to work at a furniture store, and the best part is that his boss is a woman that I know who is black. She told me that he hasn't said anything improper, but he does give her dirty looks. I also heard that his fiancée dumped him. Somehow, someone caught Jason being racist in public and posted it online. People on social media attacked both Jason and his fiancée, and after a few weeks, she couldn't take it anymore, and she left him. And since she had been the breadwinner in their relationship, Jason now was hard up for cash and was forced to sell his car and house as he could no longer afford payments on them. As for me, well, thanks to Singh's brilliance, our team kept doing better and better, and I'm happy to say that both of us are now on the board of directors together. That day when I applied to Jumpstart, I had no idea that I would be where I am today, and honestly, as aggravating as meeting Jason was, I'm happy with how things turned out. Thanks for watching. Please like the video. Okay, Scott, that's it. I'm not gonna let you steal my money anymore or push me around. This ends today. Oh, poor little Johnny thinks he has what it takes to stand up to his betters. That's almost cute. I couldn't believe how stubborn he was. It was clear that I was no longer the weak little boy that he used to pick on, and yet he would not stop being a jerk. He even took a swing at me that I managed to duck. Since he swung first, I knew that I could fight back since it was just self-defense, and I punched him in the face. Hi there, my name is John, and I had been bullied most of my life. When I was younger, I was rather scrawny, and since I did well in school, there were a few kids that saw me as an easy target. I would complain to my parents and tell them about how I would get cornered and beaten up or teased and made fun of almost every day, but there was only so much they could do for me. Unfortunately, there was only one school in the small town that we lived in, and there weren't any other options since my parents couldn't homeschool me. Listen, John, I know that you have it hard at school, but you just need to stand up to those bullies. And if they don't back down, just do your best to make it through. But Dad, you don't get it. They are making my life a living hell. I know, John, but you will eventually graduate from high school, and then you'll never have to see them ever again. They just pick on you because you make them feel insecure because they aren't as smart as you. Just do your best, and maybe in the meantime, we can go to the gym together? I wanted to believe my father's words, but I had been bullied for so long that it was beginning to wear me down. I felt so low that I had even contemplated suicide, but my father's words rung in my head. He had promised that all I had to do was get through high school, and then I would be free from those idiots that picked on me. Weeks passed, and my bullies only ramped up their abuse of me. They would stuff me into lockers and leave me there during classes, or they would steal my lunch money and make me spend the whole day hungry. It was then that I had had enough, and I decided that I would take my father up on his offer, and together we began going to the gym. At first, I didn't see any results, but with each passing week, I began to feel stronger, and I even began to gain muscle mass. A few of my bullies noticed this and began to stop harassing me. But there was one in particular, Scott, that just wouldn't quit. Scott was the quarterback for the school football team, and he picked on me more than anyone else. One day, I had had enough, and I confronted him. "Okay, Scott, that's it. I'm not gonna let you steal my money anymore or push me around. This ends today." Oh, poor little Johnny thinks he has what it takes to stand up to his betters. That's almost cute. I couldn't believe how stubborn he was. It was clear that I was no longer the weak little boy that he used to pick on, and yet he would not stop being a jerk. He even took a swing at me that I managed to duck. Since he swung first, I knew that I could fight back since it was just self-defense, and I punched him in the face. After that, we exchanged blows until some teachers broke up the fight. I ended up nearly being expelled for that fight and had to miss 2 weeks of school, but it was worse for Scott. He was kicked off the football team on top of missing school, and he blamed me for it as well. How he could justify that stance, I didn't understand. After all, he had only lost his spot on the team because he was being a bully. I had the right to stand up for myself. When we finally were able to attend school again, Scott went right back to trying to make my life a living hell. He would tease me every day and would even break into my locker and leave bags of dog poop in there, although I could never prove that it was him that was doing it. In the end, I didn't know what to do. Here I had finally stood up to him. I had grown stronger, and yet he still wouldn't stop picking on me. It was infuriating. It was then that I hatched a plan. If he wouldn't stop, then it was up to me to make it at least hard, if not unappealing, to continue to pick on me. And so, I doubled the amount of time that I spent at the gym, and when I felt strong enough, I tried out for the football team. The coach was so impressed with me that he made me the new quarterback. With that done, the first step to my plan had been achieved, and I then moved on to my next one. All of Scott's friends were on the football team, and he had been dating the head cheerleader. But I had plans to make those friends mine, and to even try to steal his girlfriend as well. The next step of my plan was risky, and there was a lot of margins for error. But I did my best, and I played really well, and our team won quite a few games as a result. We did so well, in fact, that we made it to the championships. As a result, everyone on the team loved me, and Beverly, the head cheerleader, took notice of me. Things between her and Scott were on rocky footing to begin with after he had escalated his bullying of me, and now seeing me as the quarterback and winning games for our school had made her see me in a new light. The championships consisted of 4 games, and thanks to my leadership, we were able to make it through the first 3 with ease. On the day that we were driving out to the big and final game, all the cheerleaders and football players loaded up onto a bus and drove to the next city over for the game. On the way there, Beverly told me that she had developed a crush on me and wanted to know if I wanted to go on a date after we won the big game. I, of course, agreed. That day, we played as good as we possibly could, and although it ended up being a very close game, we ended up winning by only 3 points. It was the first time that our school had won a championship in over a decade, and the whole school celebrated. Days after that, I took Beverly out for dinner to a local restaurant, and we had an amazing time, right up until we finished eating and were on our way to a movie. The theater was only a few blocks away from the restaurant, so we decided to walk there. On our way, Scott ambushed us though, and he looked like he was going to murder me. Good, I finally found you. You are going to pay for ruining my life. What are you talking about? You ruined your own life by being an absolute jerk. When will you realize that your bullying me is what is causing your life to fall apart? Stop lying. Scott lurched at me and started trying to punch me, but it was obvious that he was a bit drunk and his movements were clumsy. He tried to fight me, but I was able to dodge his fists, and eventually I pushed him to the ground in an attempt to end the fight without hurting him. Just as he was about to stand back up and charge at me, a pair of police officers showed up and intervened and separated us. Thankfully, the officers let Beverly and I go while they detained Scott for more questioning. Although I suspect that they only did so because I didn't escalate things. After that day, I didn't see Scott again for a long time. Eventually, I went to school for law, and after I graduated, I knew exactly what I wanted to do once I graduated and set my sights on becoming a police officer. I had been bullied as a child, and I wanted to do my part to help prevent others from having to experience it. I'm also happy to say that Beverly and I are still together, and are married, and are expecting our first child. Things for me were going very well. Then one day, the unexpected happened. My partner and I got a call to report to a domestic abuse call, and as we pulled up to the house, there standing out in front of the house was Scott and his girlfriend. His girlfriend was on the ground in tears, and it was obvious that she had been hit by him more than once. My partner rushed over and drew his nightstick and hit Scott on his back to get him away from his girlfriend. Seeing this, I ran over and pinned Scott down and threw handcuffs on him. I would be lying if I said that I didn't put a bit more weight into where I put my knee on his back, and I have no doubt that he'll have a very large bruise there. After we had thrown Scott into the back of the squad car, we interviewed his girlfriend, who told us that Scott had threatened to kill her, and she wanted to press charges against him, and I couldn't really blame her. The case against him was pretty airtight, and considering how badly she was hurt and what he had said to her, I knew that he was more than likely going to face some serious prison time. It was an amazing feeling arresting my childhood bully, and all the way to the police station I made sure to tell Scott all about how my life had turned out, and how Beverly and I were expecting. It was plainly obvious that with each word he was getting more and more frustrated, but my partner and I just laughed it off. Oh, and my partner is Derek, one of my old teammates, and before I joined the team, he had been a former friend of Scott's, but after I joined the team, he kicked him to the curb. So the whole ride to the police station was a bit of a reunion.
Michaela's boyfriend suddenly walked into the house while I was reading in the living room, holding 2 bags and a box. I wondered what he was doing at our house with that much luggage. Just before I could ask, Michaela and my parents walked into the living room. Right there, they crushed me completely with the words they said to me.
You have to leave the house. Michaela's boyfriend needs somewhere to stay before they get married and move to the States.
I was shocked to my bones. They were kicking me out for Michaela's boyfriend. I burst into tears. I pleaded with them that I had nowhere to go, but they didn't care. Michaela walked away and returned with my things. That night, I was kicked out of the house. It was a tough period for me. My twin sister and I have always been treated differently from a very young age. Now, I wasn't ugly, but I agree that I'm not as pretty as my twin. You see, even though we are twins, we aren't identical twins. She had long, healthy hair, longer lashes, pretty face, and the perfect body. During our childhood years, it was obvious who my parents' favorite was. There was a time when they were invited to a party, and my sister and I were around 10 years of age at the time. The invitation, though, stated that they had to come alone or bring only one more person. We were all in the living room when my parents were discussing what to do. They wanted to go with us, but doing the invitation stated that all 4 of us couldn't go.
Well, we can only bring one of them, so should we take Michaela? She's more presentable as our child.
Right? I was thinking the same. Michaela, would you like to go with us?
As expected, she agreed to go with them. I sat a little distance away from them, watching as they discussed happily, forgetting about me. 2 days later, they left for the party, leaving me all alone in our big house without food. I was forced to eat just bread, as I couldn't find anything else. They returned home very late at night, my dad carrying a sleeping Michaela in his arms. I ran to give them a hug, happy they were finally home. However, my parents brushed me aside after a brief hug and went upstairs. Feeling sad, I went up to my room to sleep. When we became teenagers, my introverted side began to show. I still think that I only became introverted, though, because of how I was always treated and left out of things by my family. I had no friends, so I was always home after school. However, Michaela had a lot of friends. My parents always ensured to buy her everything she requested. Whenever we went out shopping, Michaela was allowed to get whatever she wanted, while I was only ever given scraps that my parents selected. Due to how good Michaela always looked and how lavishly she spent, people got attracted to her and wanted to befriend her. On our 15th birthday, my parents wished a happy birthday to my sister first. From my room where I sat crying, I could hear their happy voices in the living room. I remained in my room until noon, not eating or speaking. Later, I began to hear noises in the house. I couldn't help but wonder what was going on. My door opened, and my dad poked his head in. A grin appeared on my face, as I thought he was there to wish me a happy birthday.
Leave the house for a few hours. We're throwing a party for Michaela and her friends, and she doesn't want you around the house. I left the back door open for you.
However, my joy got caught short when he said, I was dumbfounded. He left immediately after he told me that, and I could feel my heart folding. How could he do that to me? While I was thinking about it, the door opened again to reveal my mom.
Did your father not tell you to leave? Get the hell up from that bed.
Hearing her scream, I sprang up and dashed out of the bed, my hair a mess. I went out through the back of the house into the street. Since I hadn't eaten all day, I got so weak after walking aimlessly for a long time. When I could barely walk anymore, I was forced to sit on the cold ground. I remained there, hungry and tired until late into the night. I thought Michaela must have finished her party, so I managed to return home. Just then, my parents also drove into the compound.
What are you doing here? Your sister's friends are still here. You can't go in.
I was confused. Why can't I go in just because my sister and her friends were in? That night, I didn't keep quiet. I fired back at them, telling them I was going to go in because I had as much rights as Michaela. However, that angered my parents. They told me I should be lucky I was born together with my sister. According to them, an ugly girl like me didn't have a place in their lives, and I should know my place. Because of our argument, I was forced to sleep outside the house, in the freezing cold, on an empty stomach. This went on until we finally finished high school. When it was time for college, Michaela was allowed to go to an expensive college which she'd always dreamed about attending. I wanted to go with her, but Michaela refused. She didn't want anyone to associate her with me. My parents also said I didn't deserve to attend a school as expensive as that, so I was left to go to a less popular and cheap school. Things got worse for me when my parents refused to get me important things I needed at college. I was forced to borrow from others while my sister got everything. In my second year, I got a part-time job. I couldn't afford to beg from others anymore. I hid it from my parents, and with the money I got from it, I settled some bills my parents refused to take care of. 3 years later, we finally finished. I studied medicine while my sister studied business. Once we were done, my parents helped my sister start up her clothing line and also her cosmetics business. It was hard for me to undertake my residency program after college, as most hospitals were discriminating in terms of the college we attended. Mine was too local, so they didn't want to take me in. I tried for a year, and during that period, my sister's business flourished. I was forced to go to her for help. Since she'd become influential, I thought she could put in words for me with her friends and help me start the program in a good hospital. But my sister refused, saying,
You won't ever become a doctor. Stop trying now that you still can. I won't waste my time helping a miserable fellow. Leave my sight.
I was shocked by her response. How could she say that to her sister? I tried to beg her more, but she had her guards throw me out of her company, causing me to have a bruise on my knee. I went home in tears and told my parents about her behavior. Now, I wonder why I did that. As usual, they supported her and asked me to take my miserable self away from their faces. I got a full-time job and forgot about my residency program for a while. A year later, we both got into relationships, mine being my first. One day, my parents asked me to bring him over. I was happy, thinking they were finally interested in me. On the evening of the next day, I brought my boyfriend home. I was surprised to see my sister do the same. While eating dinner, my parents and sister out on their usual behavior, comparing both men and saying how much of a loser my boyfriend was to be in a relationship with an ugly lady.
He's ugly and poor too. As they say, birds of the same feathers flock together.
They all burst into laughter. When it got too much to handle, my boyfriend was forced to stand up and leave, their loud laughter following him. I stood up, tears in my eyes, and rushed after him. I tried to apologize on their behalf, but he wasn't having it. Right there, he broke up with me. I tried to hold him, but he pushed me off and stormed off. I felt a rush of shame, anger, and disappointment within me. I confronted my parents and Michaela after her boyfriend left, but only received more mockery in return. With my boyfriend gone, I focused more on just working. 2 months later, Michaela's boyfriend suddenly walked into the house while I was reading in the living room, holding 2 bags and a box. I wondered what he was doing at our house with that much luggage. Just before I could ask, Michaela and my parents walked into the living room. Right there, they crushed me completely with the words they said to me.
You have to leave the house. Michaela's boyfriend needs somewhere to stay before they get married and move to the States.
I was shocked to my bones. They were kicking me out from Michaela's boyfriend. I burst into tears, I pleaded with them that I had nowhere to go, but they didn't care. Michaela walked away and returned with my things. That night, I was kicked out of the house. It was a tough period for me. I spent 2 weeks going from one cheap hotel to the other before I was finally able to get a small apartment. That act of theirs prompted me to want to do better for myself. I worked harder and connected myself with influential people. With their help, I was able to start my residency program. It lasted for 2 years. Due to how fast I learned and how great I proved myself to be, I was retained as a doctor in the hospital, earning unbelievably high. Not for once did I think about my family throughout those years. I was more concerned about my growth. 3 years later, while in my mansion with a few friends, I was told that a woman who looked like me was begging to see me. I knew immediately that it was Michaela, but I wondered how she found me and what she wanted from me. I asked them to let her in. When I saw Michaela, my jaw dropped open. She was dressed in tattered clothes, her hair looking like it hadn't been combed for years. She was in tears. My friends and I sat and listened to her. According to her, she got deceived by her boyfriend, the one they sent me out for. He made her invest in a scam project and took off with all her money. Not only that, he also got my parents to invest in it, thinking they'd gain triple the amount afterward. My sister had to take loans too. When my father heard about him absconding with their money, he was hit with a heart attack and died. My mother fainted, and as she fell, she hit her head hard on the tiled floor, resulting in a brain injury that rendered her paralyzed with all her memory lost. Michaela had to sell all her businesses to pay for her loans. However, even after that, she still had quite a lot of debt to pay. She came to plead for forgiveness and my help, as they desperately needed it. I was elated hearing that, and I didn't fail to express it to her. I made her recall all the hardships they made me go through from a tender age, and how I had to work extremely hard to get myself to where I am. She held my legs, crying and begging, but I wasn't having it. I had my security guards throw her out of my house, just like she did when I went to get help from her many years ago. 2 days later, Michaela came to my office, still begging. I threatened to have her arrested if she came again before having her thrown out. A week later, as I arrived home in my car, I met her in front of my gate. I could tell that she was desperate when she pulled a knife on me and demanded that I give her some money or else she would stab me. She said that it was the least that I could do, since I owed her since we were family. Unfortunately for her, though, she was far too weak, and I was able to overpower her and disarm her before she could even try to hurt me. Once I got the knife away from her, I beat her up. I know that I probably shouldn't have, but after all the times that she and my parents had mistreated me and abused me over the years, this was finally my chance to get even with her. Once she was unconscious, I called the police and had her arrested for trespassing and threatening me with a weapon. The police dragged her away, and she ended up spending the next 5 years in prison. While there, my mother was sent to live in a nursing home since there was no one around to take care of her. From what I hear, the home that she was sent to is notorious for being among the worst places to live, and I have no doubt that she is quite miserable there. As for my sister, I have no doubt that she will have an even harder time getting money once she is released from prison. She was already in debt, but with a criminal history, she will have an even harder time. Personally, after all that they put me through, I think they have gotten off lightly. Thanks for watching.